And for more on the West Bank crisis, journalist Francis Hughes joins me live from Ireland. Thank you for joining us on the news. It's the first time in years that the Israeli military has used, attack helicopters in the West Bank. What would you say is responsible for what seems an escalation, a sharp escalation of fightings in this area?
I think what we're witnessing is the further movement of the Israeli society to the right through the elections recently that returned Netanyahu as prime minister and brought more right-wing members, especially politicians connected with the settler movement, into power, including people like Ben Giver, who are violently anti-Palestinian. They're very much pro the settler movement. And I think what we're witnessing in Jenin, especially with the use of the attack helicopters, is the further demonization and dehumanization of the Palestinians. Many civilians shot, murdered and martyred, many injured, homes destroyed, firing missiles in built-up suburban areas. This is more like the war in Ukraine than it is some type of what the Israelis would consider to be an internal security problem, when in effect they are illegally occupying the West Bank and Gaza. And so far in 2023, they have murdered over 170 Palestinians, to include men, women and children, with thousands more injured and many people becoming displaced refugees within their own communities.
Well, in the past 18 months, we've seen Israel intensify its raid into Palestinian cities, and the casualty rate on both sides have reached levels we've not seen in many years. Precisely what does this say about the U.S.-led attempts to de-escalate tensions in the West Bank?
The United States administration and Joe Biden are not interested in peace in West Asia. If they were, they wouldn't be in Syria. They wouldn't have invaded Iraq. They wouldn't have destroyed Libya. They wouldn't be trying to contend with Iran. America gives political cover. It gives the fig leaf of responsibility and democracy and accountability to the Israeli state. But the US is Israel's main backer to the tune of $4 billion per annum. While there are countless millions who are homeless in America, while American infrastructure struggles to survive as bridges collapse, as trains appear to crash and derail almost on a daily basis, America is protecting and providing assistance militarily and financially to Israel. So when they call for peace and de-escalation, what they are actually calling for is pacification of the Palestinian right to use arms under international law to defend themselves and indeed rid themselves of an illegal colonial occupation by the apartheid Israeli state.
Well, when you said the U.S. is not interested in peace in that area, the United States recently categorically denounced reported plans by Israel to further expand its settlements in the occupied West Bank, precisely saying that that intent and attempt violates Israel's previous commitments with the Biden administration.
Well, politicians are very fond of saying one thing in public and then doing something else in private. I realize that there are problems between Biden and Netanyahu, and in fact, I think Netanyahu's son accused President Joe Biden of being involved in a kind of color revolution soft coup against Netanyahu, trying to use liberal Israelis, liberal Zionists, liberal apartheid Jews against the established order which is in place at the moment. But I personally have heard these calls for, I would imagine, decades. I've heard them from the EU. I've heard condemnation from Britain. But this is just a public position taken by these administrations who, in the background, continue to arm, finance and politically support the Israeli state, which, if we remember, was created by Britain and has been subsidized by America from 1948 on.
So let's take a look at what officials in Palestine are saying. An official with the Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad was quoted to have said that Israel's use of aircraft would push our fighters to use tools that will surprise the enemy. What are the chances of this threat being acted upon, and what do you think can be done to end this very quickly?
Well, the obvious way to end it very quickly and to have peace within the region is for Israel to end its illegal occupation of both the West Bank and Gaza, to remove the illegal settlements and the over 500,000 to 800,000 illegal settlers in both East Jerusalem and the occupied West Bank. I think that the Palestinian resistance, who are part of the axis of resistance, which includes Iran and includes Syria and includes Hezbollah and includes the Palestinian factions, of which there are several with Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Fatah, etc. I think what they're saying is they probably have the technology to bring down these attack helicopters. The problem is, if you bring down an attack helicopter in a suburban area over a village or city, it's quite likely to crash and injure more Palestinians. But if it's out in the open, I would say it's a fair target. And if the Palestinian resistance could bring down these attack helicopters, thus saving the lives of Palestinian civilians on the ground, I think that potentially that's a worthwhile endeavor.
But do you think that this crisis is getting the amount of international intervention it requires?
Absolutely not. I'm in Belfast in Ireland, what I consider to be the occupied part of Ireland, still under British financial and political occupation, the military occupation. What we see now happening is a build-up of the resistance to what's happening on the ground, and that is not being reflected in Western media. I'm being told by my media, by mainstream media, by the BBC, by CNN, by others, that Israel is fighting against a terrorist organization, trying to put the Palestinian resistance, trying to equate it with ISIS. ISIS are bloodthirsty terrorists created by the CIA and the American administration in order to destabilize the region for regime change. Palestinian resistance group are national liberation armies. They are anti-colonial organizations that are fighting a colonial occupation of their land, which they're entitled to do under international law. If only the people in the West were told the truth, perhaps more people would be awake to the plight of the Palestinian people, and more people would come to their aid and demand that Israel, the apartheid state, be dismantled, firstly from within Israel, and secondly from without, by the European Union, by the West, increasingly by Iran and Russia and China and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Belt and Road Initiative, which will all further isolate Israel going forward to the next decade.
Well, I bet the U.S. would definitely disagree with you, particularly on how many of these terrorist groups were formed. We're hoping that there will be more international intervention and that peace will be restored to that part of the world. Journalist Francis Hughes joins us live from Ireland. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.